My name's Abby Karch. I'm the director of training and marketing here at Ice Cream Social Media. I'm super excited today to be joined by Sean Keifer. I'll just tell you a little bit about Sean for those of you who are kind of meeting you for the first time. Sean oversees our team here at Ice Cream Social Media. He is a true digital marketing guru. He is a professor of digital marketing at the University of Miami and also the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Also a former brand strategist for the leading apparel brand Perry Ellis, and has over a decade of experience in social media and digital marketing. So a wealth of information we shall be getting from Sean. And I know we're both pretty experienced using email marketing, so I'm excited about kind of talking about that today. I'll just share, Sean oversees the team here at Ice Cream that does our email marketing for clients. And I've personally managed email marketing for both small businesses, and kind of in a variety of industries using like platforms like Constant Contact and MailChimp, but also for sort of larger companies and using more robust B2B email marketing automation platforms like Pardot by Salesforce and that kind of thing. And so, we're going to be talking today really about just some of the best tips for sort of small businesses, but really they can, any kind of business can use these tips for how to really make the most of your email marketing and to be successful. But first, I'll just kind of like sort of talk about the elephant in the room, which is that we are a social media marketing company. So why are we talking about email marketing? But the thing is that we actually do, we do a lot of email here at Ice Cream. We found that it's hard to find a really great company, digital marketing company that kind of can do email so well that it's very effective. So we kind of started doing the service ourselves and have had a lot of success with it. Just to kind of, for those of you tuning in that just want to know like what it is exactly that we do, I'll just tell you in a nutshell, we kind of do it all. If you don't have email set up for your business, we can easily find the most affordable, kind of effective software for you and set it all up. But we also create the strategy. We, generate all the content. We actually create the emails and A/B test and review analytics and adjust appropriately. And we really do this for kind of a variety of businesses. So we're really in the thick of it day in and day out for our clients, producing, these emails. So anyways, but let's go ahead and just kind of chat a little bit about the power of email. I know, Sean, you do personally have done some of the emails for clients and oversee the team. Are you finding this to be like as effective or more effective even than social media marketing? What's your thought on that?
Well, long story short, and it's kind of what you said, hey, we're a social media company, but today we're talking about email. And what I always like to tell not only my students, but also our clients as well, is that, there's so many different tools within the toolkit for digital marketing. And the idea here is that, yes, we can customize and piecemeal those together for individual customized experience and strategies. But ideally, best in practice, best in class kind of approaches are kind of taking each one of those individual buckets, social media, email marketing, your website, what have you, all of those individual components, and kind of streamlining them so that they can all work together. And if we add up all of those buckets together, that's going to give you kind of that best in class approach here. So that's really kind of the initial starting point that we want to think of, is that, yes, this is a big deal. Email has been around for some time nowadays. Now that everyone's been kind of carrying a phone in their hand for like the last 7 or 8, 10 years, email certainly has become, even more ultra relevant than ever before. So it's definitely a big piece of the pie. And as it relates to kind of reaching your current base or future bases, you're definitely going to have some piece of your strategy highly engaged and highly focused on maximizing out the opportunities that your email marketing strategy can provide for you. So it's really important to kind of consider that. So as we go through kind of the tips and tricks, the best in class kind of approach throughout this discussion, I would also encourage the listeners to kind of, read between the lines for what we're saying, because the tips and tricks, sure, we can give those out. That's kind of what agencies do. They give you the best practices. Here it is. But what we're going to talk about a little bit deeper as well is some of the thoughts behind we do these approaches. Or if you've already kind of been running an email blast campaign, been doing some things wrong, you need to consider that that also has an impact as you kind of course correct and kind of level up with your strategy at play. So we want to be considerate of all of these things, not just, hey, here's an action point, let's do it. We want to consider the why and how around why we're discussing this today for you. So with that said, the way I look at it, social media compared to email marketing, social media is really kind of like the icing on the cake, whereas email blasting, email marketing is more of that solid foundation. It's something that kind of comes up and should exist as the website is developed, as you start kind of entering into touch points to, initially capture some of that lead information across those multiple marketing touch points. So really what we would look at for email marketing is it is one of those OGs, as I like to say, or original gangsters. It's been around for a long time. We all know this fairly well because we're all getting saturated with emails every day, which is why it is not only important to understand those best practices, but take those best practices and apply them to you in an authentic, customized, organic kind of way that suits your business and your clientele needs, not only based off of the best practices, but what the prior data or the data points around your marketing activities look like. That way you're able to kind of put your best foot forward and work against yourself. So for me, probably lesson number one is we want to kind of walk this back. We're not competing with everyone at this moment, even though we are, of course, when it comes to emails. The starting point realistically is you're competing with yourself first. So if you've done multiple campaigns in the past, you're going to measure up against, how can we improve upon those? How can we trim the fat, make them more successful compared to what we have been doing and what we've learned so far? If you're just starting out, great. That's a great starting point because you can start to bake these best practices in and build that authenticity, that organic, natural experience that people are going to really, truly want to engage with. So that's kind of like my thoughts on where social media lies versus email. And email is definitely kind of one of those anchor functions in my mind.
Yeah. And, it's interesting because I actually just read a couple statistics about email marketing that were pretty shocking to me. One was that email campaigns have a higher conversion rate than traffic from Google or social media marketing, and they have a higher return on investment than you can expect from other forms of marketing. And I mean, I guess it's not really shocking because if you are doing it right, if you have emails from people who have shown interest in your business, they've opted in, we always say never buy an email list. It's kind of the worst thing you can do for your email marketing. But if you have those emails, then you really have an audience that's already invested and they're engaged in your business. So the chances of them, kind of responding to your emails is going to be better than maybe someone on that is just Googling or whatever for the first time, or someone who maybe kind of lightly sort of follows you on social media, or you pop up from an ad or something like that. But also the other thing I think is just interesting to realize is that social media, I mean, you have to be on social. It's kind of one of these non-negotiables for marketing, but really you don't own your followers. It's like Instagram or Clubhouse or Facebook, that they own the followers. If one of those platforms closes down, there goes your people. But your email list is something that you own. You're going to have that no matter what. So it's pretty important. It's if you're doing anything, make sure to be constantly capturing emails and building those and then using them. And that I think is just, there's a lot of missed opportunity we see with small businesses, especially because email feels kind of daunting, and it's this thing we know we should do, but who has the time to kind of put together the whole email? And there's that fear of just clicking the send button. You're like, oh gosh, was there an error or grammatical error? Did I have the right links? So that's why a lot of, I know businesses outsource to us because they're I don't want to deal with the stress of it, but I know I need to do this. But let's talk about just the number one thing, which is building your subscriber list. We want to I know we talk a lot to our clients about this and kind of provide ways, but what would you say some of the best ways are to just capture emails and make sure that you have processes in place to do so?
Okay, so yeah, it really starts with kind of that customer experience mentality from day one before you even send those emails out, because your original marketing touch points that you're sending out, whether it's on social whether it's collecting leads through your website, through Google, what have you, any kind of touch points like that where you have the opportunity to collect potential customer information or kind of lead development, if you will. It's always going to be great to kind of start with that in mind, that this is the beginning of a journey, that once they submit their information, we want to be able to continue that story, continue that nurturing process so that we can guide them towards the value that the business, product, or service is offering for them on behalf of the business. So one of the best ways to do this is to make sure that we really have clear calls to action, no confusion when it comes to entering the information. You want to kind of alert people as to why you're collecting this information, give out not only then, but at future dates. No peer pressure here. It's all about kind of adding value, and hey, we've got that value that you would want to kind of engage in. So that's kind of really what it's all about. So we want to make sure that we're telling our story holistically, knowing that this is the starting touch point. The whole goal on that first kind of initial touch points, or that brand awareness segment, is really all going to be about capturing that information first and foremost. And then, of course, once you have that information, making sure that it's organized on the back end, collected, logged, and coordinated also will help your email strategy a great deal, not only at that moment, but moving into the future, because organization definitely is key. We don't want to lose any potential leads throughout this process through messy activities or whatnot. So we want to just kind of keep that in mind. And, whether it's a receptionist answering calls, getting as much information as you possibly can, and kind of driving out that problem is what the goal for the content could be. Because if we can identify a problem that they have, that's how we want to present the content, is the solution for that, or a path to a solution at some point. So we almost want to be able to kind of low-key read their minds, and how we do this is by interpreting previous data. Obviously, knowing your customer exceptionally well is crucial from day one to infinity. So all these kind of best practices are going to be really crucial in just kind of that opening touch point. And then, of course, past that touch point, you want to have a plan, not only for email. What's the next messaging going to be? Are you going to launch a welcome email now that they finally signed up? That would be a great best practice to do. Give them a warm welcome, thank them for being part of your community where so many others have benefited, that sort of messaging. And then at that point, it kind of comes to a fork in the road where, yes, we know they're likely going to run into more digitally to some degree, but at the same time, the other pipeline, the back end, is email communications, where then hopefully we are going to once, twice, 3 times a week, depending on your business and your strategy and the needs, kind of reach out to them, re-engage, re-educate them, alert them, keep them apprised of specials, offers, introduce them to the team, the business on a deeper level, all of those things. So there's definitely 2 kind of pathways you can take. But if we're looking at email, we definitely want to start off then with that welcome email, just to let them know, hey, we're on it and we're ready to go. We are at your service. And the easier you make the journey for the customer, the easier the conversion ratio starts to rise, if you will.
Yeah. So if we go kind of like when we're thinking about getting subscribers, obviously, like you said, this is starting even just with whoever answers the phone in your business, having them collect that information early on and make sure that it's being put into the system, and, confirming that, just letting the person know that, you collect the info so you're able to contact them. And you send out a monthly newsletter, and just kind of confirm that they're fine with that. Usually they're happy to. You're not selling their information. You may need to kind of let them know that in advance, just to prevent the objection of, oh, I don't want to give you my info. But just letting them know it's going to be valuable stuff coming to them, maybe some like discounts on the stuff that they're interested in with you. And then also like other ways, even just online, every time you have kind of an interaction with someone on social media, they comment or they reach out, they make a comment on one of your posts, you can take that conversation to a DM and then ask for their email to continue the conversation via email. And have, you can send an opt-in email after that, just to make sure they do want to get your emails. But capturing it that way, also like if you ever run Facebook ads or anything like that, finding ways through that to capture emails. If you do any type of events in your business, whether it's in person or even online, and like you run contests, or you have a raffle, collect emails at every possible point so that you can put them in your system and build your list that way. And then, of course, on your own website, having a subscribe button on your site, and having, collecting the email through forms, which most people do, but having the little opt-in for making sure they're open to getting your newsletters and your promo emails and all of that. So the biggest thing though is just kind of making sure that in every place you have a spot for them or every touch point there's a chance to capture the email. We work with a lot of businesses that unfortunately they don't have they start off with kind of a list of 0 emails or less than 100 or even less than 1,000, and maybe they've been in business for over 5 years, but just haven't really kind of collected and worked on getting their emails. So we really help them with that first and foremost.
Sure. And you bring up some good points too that I just kind of wanted to highlight that, yes, email marketing is a marketing function, absolutely. But I almost like to think in my head when I'm thinking about the email process and how to start at those touch points. Really, the finer point kind of relates for me to that customer service experience. So if someone comments on a post, like you were saying, and then you move it to DMs, yes, of course, you're going to want to push for that information. But naturally, continuing that conversation should be top of mind regardless, because we're handling that customer experience. Even if they're not a customer today, you never know, they could be tomorrow. So that's why we want to kind of almost over engage, make sure we always keep the conversation open. We always allow for the viewers, the commenters, etc., to kind of have the opportunity to always be able to reach out to you digitally, get that communication that they need. And we know that instant gratification is a big factor there for great success online. So the better that we can get at customer service, instant gratification, and then capturing that information, that's going to be really the magic mix that's going to be able to kick things off in the right direction. They're going to feel good about their experience because they've already added value. And then simply by collecting their information at the end of that customer service experience or informational kind of discussion, if you will, then once they get that welcome email, wow, things are starting to feel, synced up, coordinated, and it just feels right. And when a business is doing all the right things, and a customer does subconsciously recognize that, and they'll oftentimes less subconsciously recognize it when you do things wrong as well, and they'll kind of just shut you out. So the whole goal here is to start off that journey quite flawlessly, if you will. You're at their service, you can help them, and then bam, you hit them with a welcome email. We're here at your service next month, next week, what have you. So
yeah, great points. In terms of like email design, because I know you're doing a lot of kind of A/B testing and just seeing what is actually effective. Let's talk about kind of what's working in terms of email design and also just content, like what types of content to be putting out there.
Sure, and obviously this varies quite a bit across industry, across subject matter, across frequency. If you've already kind of got a strategy baked in, and this also relates to kind of what I said at the beginning of this whole kind of spiel or discussion that we're having, Abby, is that we'll go over some of these touch points here, which is great, but I also want us to consider, what does it look like? What have you done in the past versus what you're doing in the future? And the reason why I say that, and I kind of like, anyone can just throw up some best practices, and if you go on the internet and you look up anything related to digital, let alone email marketing or social media, you're going to realize that, wow, everybody has the answers, kind of. They're all proposing a solution, the top 10 list of this, the top 10 list of that. Make sure you do this. Sure, those are obvious. Some things like, make sure that you have a strong call to action above the fold, aka above the fold means, as soon as you open that email, are you pretty much able to see the call to action? Are you eventually going to see something that's going to drive you to be engaged with that email content? Are you starting off on the right foot visually, with the experience, etc.? That's kind of what we look at. So we want to use engaging kind of content, exciting content that feels organic, authentic to your business, product, or service, or brand. And we want to make sure that everything is just kind of flowing right. The readability is there. It's organized in a user-friendly way. The images pop out as it should. The email's not too heavy with too much, graphics and animation and bells and whistles to distract from that ultimate funnel perspective. And again, right, everything in digital marketing really comes down to kind of creating mini funnels that can participate into larger funnels, which then provide, an actual conversion result at the end of that stage, no matter when that would be. So there's a lot of these best practices that we want to consider, and a great way that I like to kind of look to see what's coming out, how the email kind of strategy is even evolving across industries and modern touch points today. I always am looking at, kind of the emails served up to me from that perspective of what do I like? What don't I like? Why did I open this email today being so busy when I've ignored the past 3 emails from them? All of these context clues are really what we want to start baking in, along with, sure, your email is easy to read. Sure, it's not cluttered with too much bells and whistles. Sure, you have an obvious call to action. You have multiple touch points leading back to your website or to your business so that they can get in contact with you in a variety of ways or explore on their own kind of path if they choose to do so, versus just kind of clicking that call to action button. So that's one of the most important things, is just kind of understanding, what about you? What makes you do that? And so far, what have your best performing emails, if you've been running emails before, what do they look like? What was the phraseology? What kind of verbiage did you use? If you have a terrible email, again, also worthy to look at, because what went wrong there? What do we want to avoid personally that we know have turned people off in the past? All of these things are important to consider. And it definitely is also going to relate to the frequency, kind of what you have at play. But just through the modern day, we know everybody's sending emails. Everybody's kind of hip to this game. So once you get the best practices kind of baked in there, the good visuals, the easy call to action, the scrollability, what have you, then you're going to want to take almost a secondary pass at and say, great, this looks solid. It looks really impactful. But now how do I fight through the noise and get this to be clicked on out of the other 100 to 500 to even 1,000 emails every day that people get sent? And, not only does it start with that initial touch point and then the welcome email and making sure that you've done a good job leading up to this point, but then also now it's time to say, hey, here's the burning questions that you've had that you're not getting a clear answer for online or at other touch points, or here's that special that you really deserve, or hey, we're kicking things off in that welcome email with 10% off to you if you engage with our services over the next month. Little things like that are really what drives the needle. Because I can tell you right now, there's probably about 50 emails right now in my email box that all follow the best practices, and about 49 of them have been left on read. So it is an uphill battle, but the more creative, the more engaging and authentic and streamlined the entire process can be, that's going to be, ammunition for people to stay, hey, let me see what email they got going on here. Let me see. And of course, one of the best ways to do that is in kind of the subject line. Are we using emojis? Are we being sarcastic? Does it feel right for the brand? Does that verbiage stand out? Is it something peculiar that piques your curiosity? Is it something that you would want instantly? It's all of these things and more. And of course, as we use what has already been working for us, or as it relates to best practices, we're then also going to want to be testing these elements, because what might work for one group may not work for another. So we also can't get lost in the sauce in terms of, well, I just did the top 10 best approaches for email list. Why isn't it working? Well, sometimes we need to transcend upon that, because the competition is just so high across the board in any industry when it comes to email.
Yeah, and there actually is interesting, because like you're right, there's certain things, especially subject lines and that kind of thing, like have to be sort of tested, and you have to see what like is working based on your open rates specifically for subject lines in your industry, which is kind of what we do for clients. But there are a couple things I wanted to touch on that I've just learned, having kind of done email marketing for everything from a plastic surgery practice to nonprofits to B2B digital marketing agency, that kind of thing. So many different industries that like are pretty much just across the board, like just things to know if you are doing email. One is just using your pre-header, which is just that little kind of, that sort of small text that's underneath the subject line usually shows up in your phone. Making sure to utilize that space, because sometimes that's forgotten about.
That's a great differentiator, because oftentimes the subject line can be super witty, but you could fall into a miss if they hit that second line and then it doesn't kind of connect. So definitely super important to kind of fill out any additional kind of description space or character limit when you can, just because the more information, the better. And the more reasoning or marketing verbiage behind it that's going to help support your point is going to be crucial. So
definitely. Yeah. And then in terms of like your images that you do put in emails, keeping those small as possible, because if there's something that takes a while to load, you're gonna you're going to kind of ruffle the feathers of your subscribers. Nobody wants to have their data, like they don't want to basically take the time to wait for an image to load. But know that, emails are going to appear differently in everyone's inbox, depending on kind of what server they have. And there's certain things that are just out of your control. But when you do put in emails, have the subject or the title, when you do put in images, have the title of the image be descriptive and accurately descriptive of what the image is. Because if you have an image that the title is like 53621.jpg, and the image doesn't appear, that's what the person's going to see. So have it say, exactly what the image says: 50% off skincare through, May 31st, if that's what the image says. Just have that be the title of the JPEG.
It's a great tip. And
yeah.
With technology, you never know what can go wrong sometimes. And that's also a great point to bring up, is that whoever has been running your email campaigns, my goodness, it is a lot of responsibility. You mentioned getting nervous before hitting that send button. Absolutely. I mean, it kind of is a low-key make it or break it moment sometimes. And, with technology, sometimes despite, everybody best in class, I mean, I've seen it with other clients or customers before that were doing their own things. They've sent something out, made the mistake. So this is the better kind of catch-all for that is, yes, if there's an issue with an email, image or something like that, make sure the title is there. Always fill in the blanks, even if something goes wrong, because people do understand sometimes you'll get a glitch or a shift will happen. But that in that case, that would kind of save you, and they'd be like, oh, okay, so it relates to the skincare deal. Great, let me click through. Now I'm at the web page. Great, now I'm getting the message anyways. Perfect.
Yeah.
So it's little things like that really, kind of define the winners versus the losers in the email marketing category. And of course, there's a couple more things. I'll let you run through those, and then I also have a couple of things to kind of add to the list as well. So
yeah, well, I know one thing is that just in terms of the amount of content in an email, finding that sweet spot. And it's not always just necessarily one subject. I mean, or one, kind of feature. If it is a newsletter, you may have like 2 or 3 things in that email.
Sure.
But trying not to have like more than 3, because people just end up they just don't scroll through the whole thing. And if you have a lot of, copy that's going to be in the email, to kind of avoid having too much content, you can have a click through to your website, and you really want to use email to send people to your website and to learn more. So if you have an article or you have a Q&A or whatever, and it's kind of long, have just like some feature text in the email, and then a read more button that goes to your website, so that they can find the rest of the article on the site if they want, and it opens up in another in another browser or another tab, and then they can keep reading through your email but not feel like overwhelmed by content.
And Abby, this is the number one thing we try to guide our clients for, is that the idea here, and again, this transcends across almost all digital touch points, except for, your website or like a very specific landing page. We really need the content to be snackable. Like you should be able to either read through the whole thing and get the message, or just skim and browse and still come up with some value if you've looked at it for like 3 seconds, 5 seconds, what have you. That's why it has to be snackable. We know that we're busy. We know that some moms will be dropping their kids off at school, checking their emails kind of in the line to pick them up, and then, oh, the kids are here, we got to go, email's gone. So it's super important just to kind of make sure that, yeah, you can kind of get that message up front. It's very clear. Everything is easy. You're not putting them to do research. And you also want to keep in mind that, potentially you may, over the course of a month, only have, 10 actions from a potential lead or a viewer of your content across the board. So if you start to get them lost in the sauce and kind of going all over the email, you've got 25 subjects, subject matters, 10 specials going on, they have to spend all their time there. You've lost the energy that they had maybe to then go to your website, get the proper education, and go down that funnel as you had planned. So we just want to be conscious of that, holistic experience and how email kind of fits into that as well. So snackable is always a good approach to take as it relates to that.
Nice. Any other tips on design or content?
Sure. I mean, we've talked about, audit test your emails before hitting send, and also A/B test what's working and what's not. So almost 2 series of testing, because you want to make sure everything's proofread, kind of addressed, everything works before you actually send that out to your official communication base to begin with. And then we're also going to kind of want to audit ourselves regularly, keep an eye on how it's going, what we're doing next, what we know is working, what's not, trim the fat. And then, of course, design emails for accessibility, not only from just a usability perspective, but we also want to keep in mind too, like you said, like, hey, we can't see the images, but we can access the subject matter by understanding what the title said behind them. Little things like that make the difference. We want to focus on understanding the right metrics. It's kind of like social media with impressions. Sure, we can talk billions of impressions all day. That doesn't mean that you generated any kind of sales. And we want to kind of keep that same kind of scrutiny in line with email marketing, because it's more about open rates, click-through rates, subject matters that are working versus what's not, and always kind of leveling up each step of the way. And the goal month to month really is to kind of get better each time that we send one out, get more people to open, get more people to engage, or provide, more valuable experiences. So how do we do this? Well, obviously by inspiring action with, clear calls to action, clear marketing verbiage, snackable content, eye-catching, or natural-looking photos that don't feel overly eye-stalky, although in some cases it may be required or may strategically make sense depending on the industry. But the more authenticity that we can kind of pump in there from real life, the better that is going to be in order to drive action. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we want to make sure that, at the end of the day, we are really considering that marketing funnel. Where does email marketing kind of play a role in your marketing funnel? Have we baked it out in both of those directions where they can either stay on that path and kind of engage in your emails, or, does it also sync up with that alternate path of those other digital marketing touch points like social media, Google Ads, pay-per-click, what have you, website experience, even searches through the website can give you tips and tricks on kind of understanding what people are looking for as it relates to your business or subject matter. And then you can propose an email based off of that. It's just kind of that simple. It's looking for those opportunities, but we have to make sure everything is kind of synced up. Once you kind of get everything rocking and rolling and you kind of have a decent kind of initial base to kind of play off of, and that you've kind of got your head in the game now, then you're going to also want to start to look to segment your audience, start breaking it out into individual buckets as well, so that, hey, yes, we want to send a strategic email, but we know only 25% of our clients are going to actually likely pull the trigger on this product or service. Great. Let's get them into a separate email list that we can just shoot off to them, so that we're not over inundating our current or regular or full email list with the other information that we know will not be relevant to them. Or kind of like the welcome emails, like that's going to be kind of a separate bucket that everyone who starts their first touch point off with you will get that welcome email, and then it's kind of off to the races. So we want to make sure that we're kind of gating and fencing off these different kind of email experiences as it relates to the subject matter. Even for plastic surgery, maybe that's even dividing, speaking to females versus males, or the whole group at times. Sometimes that makes sense. Sometimes that's applicable. Sometimes that's not. And then we also just want to make sure that, the header, the footer, all those basic standard practices are in place. The easy touch points to get in contact with you, the easy opt-outs, all of these things are really going to make the difference. But as you can see here, and kind of what I've said before, is it's easy to come up with those lists. It's easy to come up with just, hey, what do I need to make my email great? It's more of the nuance behind, yeah, but where's your starting point? And what have you been doing? Where are you trying to go next? And how is your current marketing strategy even kind of set up to interplay with those marketing touch points? Because oftentimes you could be doing everything right on email, but totally bombing it somewhere else, which then is affecting your email. Or if you've had an email base kind of grown and nurtured already, if you screwed up in month 3 out of month 47, there's a good chance that you lost a lot of viewers and they're not coming back. So we also want to kind of keep this context in mind and understand that it's definitely a game of refinement, and it's a me versus me versus everybody else as the primary way of thinking about it strategically.
Yeah. Well, in terms of the, we know that, like we talked about, we don't know necessarily what's going to happen to your email when it lands, or if it lands in your subscribers' inbox, just because of the various different email servers out there and kind of things that can happen. but what can be done to sort of just improve that deliverability rate? And I kind of just want to talk on some of the actual things that you can do to improve it. Like, for instance, one would be just going through, well, I should just start with the beginning. I mean, getting permission to send your emails in the first place, having, getting those opt-ins as opposed to buying like a list and just kind of sending out a blanket email.
Sure. And then, another element would be, make sure that if you start to see that you are attracting inactive subscribers, make sure you clean them out of the list. Don't just keep, throwing your head against the wall and hoping one day that they'll enjoy what you're bringing to the table. Sometimes you just kind of have to cut your losses and move on, keep that list clean, keep it effective. That way it's not necessarily going to continue to corrupt your data as you move forward and are analyzing. And that's also one of the things that I kind of talked about earlier, but analyzing the data beforehand, understanding what worked and what didn't, is going to greatly enhance your potential opportunities to kind of outperform yourself next time. Same thing with email timing, day of the week. It kind of varies all across the board, but at the same time, this is going to relate to your business, your customer base, where you feel they're most active on, what you've seen on past emails if you sent them out, or your past engagement strategies, what have you. All of these are really important to consider, as well as, character limits in the subject matter. Do everything right. We have to do and play by the rules as bare necessities just to kind of get our foot into the game. Whereas about 10 years ago, if we did, kind of the bare necessities, we would be kind of already highly competitive. But nowadays, we know everybody is getting those emails. So we need to make sure that it feels fun, it feels authentic. Every time we send out an email, it's an opportunity to wow your viewers, make them laugh, make them educated, bring that value to the table. Don't just throw up the subject matter and say, hey, you're learning a little bit, here's the value. Are they really getting the value? The value, whether they get it or not, kind of speaks for itself through open rates, through click-throughs, etc. And in some cases, that does start with the subject line or what you've done in the past. So all of these things really added together is the difference maker. There is no one thing that you're going to be able to do that will just magically increase viewership by like 300%. And why is it so hard? Well, because of that return on investment, because everybody knows that it's such a powerful marketing tool. I believe it's like the range is like 40 to 44 to 1 return on investment. I mean, that's powerful, but that shows you that if you want that, that's like a pro stat, And if this was basketball, some baby businesses or businesses just kind of getting in there, they might be playing in high school, middle school leagues, college leagues, all that varying degrees of expertise and kind of ability has to be factored into email. So when we think of that amazing return, that's a best-in-class approach. That's something that we have to get to. But along the way, you have to put in the hours as the basketball player, in quotes, if you will, to stick with the metaphor, to kind of make sure you're making layups first before you can kind of capture that instantly. So it's also about setting expectations. And again, why I say me versus me, a win would be increasing viewership by 5 to 10% initially right off the bat. Great. That sounds pretty positive. Looking for a 44 to 1 return on investment after your third email, it's not quite how that works. So it's really important to also keep those expectations in mind. And that's usually why, too, a lot of clients go, you know what, let me go for the flashy thing, social media. We need that. And it's like, you know what, let's walk this back. Let's get you set up so that the foundation, this is a return on investment if done right and set up strategically and correctly across the board, and then nurtured and maintained correctly. This is an anchor for your business. This is what is going to keep those dollars flowing in and out. And it's more important than ever before in, say, pandemic times, as we've seen. I'm sure viewership has risen as well. I'm not sure what the final percentage of that is, but we need to keep this in mind. And this is the long-term play that we really need to factor in. So, every email that you send is an opportunity to get a little bit better, learn a little bit more, analyze a little bit more of a deeper data set. All of this kind of comes into play. It's not just one thing for sure. And it's definitely nice to kind of have a guide because most times or most businesses that are always in the action have trouble taking, that 1 to 2 steps back and saying, all right, I know I love it from the business perspective, but will my viewers, when this pops in between Nike and home cooking and all of that, will that pop up? Are we considering it on that deep of a level? Those are really the things. It starts with that mentality first, then it does before, hey, it's just a beautiful image, because everybody's capable of producing kind of a beautiful image nowadays in the era of content creation, you know?
Right, right. Well, yeah, and I mean, just essentially like whatever you can do to not look like spam, and to, and that comes with just sort of how you kind of what you
Yeah, it
have
comes with,
in your subject
it's like
line. And
personal notes from the owner, from your staff, or a real life testimonial of somebody who's actually been there, or who loves the service and wants to recommend it because they've helped, your product or service has helped their lives so much. It's the little things, it's the clever stories. It's that feeling, you feel it when you feel it, and so if you're not getting a little bit moved, or if your staff isn't 1000% convinced, take another look at it. You want to get it to a place where it really is that, oh my gosh, only you guys could do something like this, because it is your personality, but then the value is also there at the same time. And
yeah,
that ultimately is the goal.
and that is, I mean, one thing, especially just within our own, company and our parent company, Yellow Telescope, we, about every quarter, or every 6 months or so, we send out an email from our president and founder, and kind of like a personal message and that always just kind of helps, because people really like connecting with people. So if you are the owner of the business, occasionally popping into your email with a message. Maybe it is even every month in your newsletter, a message of some kind. I know we have some clients that do that, which is really effective. But just a nice way, because people are like, oh, it just kind of reminds them, oh, you are a real person, keeps them connected to you, kind of in a deeper way, as opposed to like just always sending just like one special, that you're just kind of overwhelming them with specials that kind of lose their excitement.
Yeah, and you also don't want to train them either. Like overtrain them to just only be in it for specials now. But if you do it right, they could be on the lookout for when the next treatment or procedure could be for them for a special, and you want to keep them kind of like on the hook. What's coming next? What kind of value are they going to be potentially missing if they don't click through? So it's definitely a good kind of approach to take.
Right. Great. Well, I know we are approaching the 45-minute mark here, and that was kind of how long we were anticipating this chat to go for. We're planning to do more of these chats here on Clubhouse, and if there's a topic that you're interested in, you can always reach out to us. You can find us at Ice Cream Social Media, on Instagram. And also email us. Feel free to shoot an email to Abby at icecreamsocialmedia.com, or Sean, SEAN, at icecreamsocialmedia.com. And we would love to just continue the conversation. Also, just if you have any other questions kind of about your business, what email marketing, maybe tips we may have specifically for you, or how we might be able to help, don't hesitate to reach out. So we will hopefully see you next time here on Clubhouse. Sean, any parting words?
You know what? It's been a great time. Happy to be here today. I appreciate all the viewers that we've had so far, and I'm looking forward to continuing these discussions offline as well. As Abby said, feel free to reach out to us. At the end of the day, this is what we do. We live it and breathe it every day, so you don't have to. And you know that the best practices are kind of just baked in from our initial experience from day one to infinity. So we are at your service, and we can't wait to help improve your business and kind of meet the goals that you guys kind of have set forth. Hey, thank you, Abby. You've been a great host today. Always a pleasure to chat with some West Coasties,
Yeah.
Happy to be here, and thanks so much.
Exactly. All right, Sean, enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right. See you guys at the Clubhouse. Bye.